In clothing, a suit is a set of garments made from the same cloth, usually consisting of at least a jacket and trousers. Lounge suits, which originated in Britain as country wear, are the most common style of Western suit. Other types of suit still worn today are the dinner suit, part of black tie, which arose as a lounging alternative to dress coats in much the same way as the day lounge suit came to replace frock coats and morning coats, and, rarely worn today, the morning suit. This article discusses the lounge suit, elements of informal dress code, the variations in design, cut, and cloth, such as 2- and 3-piece, or single and double-breasted, determine the social and work suitability of the garment. Often, suits are worn, as is traditional, with a collared shirt and necktie. Until around the 1960s, as with all men's clothes, a hat would have been also worn when the wearer was outdoors. Suits also come with different numbers of pieces. A 2-piece suit has a jacket and the trousers. A 3-piece adds a waistcoat. Further pieces might include a flat cap made from the same cloth. Originally, as with most clothes, a tailor made the suit from his client's selected cloth. These are now often known as bespoke suits. The suit was custom-made to the measurements, taste, and style of the man. Since the Industrial Revolution, most suits are mass-produced, and as such have sold as ready-to-wear garments. Currently, suits are sold in roughly 4 ways. Bespoke, in which the garment is custom-made by a tailor from a pattern created entirely from the customer's measurements, giving the best fit and free choice of fabric. Made to measure, in which a pre-made pattern is modified to fit the customer, and a limited selection of options and fabrics is available. Ready to wear or off the peg, which is sold ready to be tailored finally as is. Suit separates, where jacket and trousers are sold separately, allowing a customer to choose the size that is best for them and limit the amount of alterations needed. History. The current styles were founded in the Industrial Revolution during the late 18th century that sharply changed the elaborately embroidered and jeweled formal clothing into the simpler clothing of the British Regency period, which gradually evolved to the stark formality of the Victorian era. It was in the search for more comfort that the loosening of rules gave rise in the late 19th century to the modern lounge suit. Etymology. The word suit derives from the French suite, meaning following, from some late Latin derivative form of the Latin verb sequere equals I follow, because the component garments follow each other and have the same cloth and color and are worn together. As a suit covers all or most of the wearer's body, the term suit was extended to a single garment that covers all or most of the body, such as boiler suits and diving suits and space suits. Brooks Brothers is generally credited with first offering the ready-to-wear suit, a suit which was sold already manufactured and sized, ready to be tailored. It was Hager Clothing that first introduced the concept of suit separates in the U.S., the concept of separately sold jackets and trousers, which are widely found in the marketplace today. Parts of a suit. There are many possible variations in the choice of the style, the garments and the details of a suit. The cut. The silhouette of a suit is its outline. Tailored balance created from a canvas fitting allows a balanced silhouette, so a jacket need not be buttoned and a garment is not too tight or too loose. A proper garment is shaped from the neck to the chest and shoulders to drape without wrinkles from tension. Shape is the essential part of tailoring that often takes hand work from the start. The 2 main cuts are 1. Double-breasted suits, a conservative design with 2 columns of buttons, spanned by a larger overlap of the left and right sides, and 2. Single-breasted suits, in which the sides overlap very slightly, with a single column of buttons. Good tailoring anywhere in the world is characterized by strongly tapered sides and minimal shoulder, whereas often rack suits are padded to reduce labor. More casual suits are characterized by less construction and tailoring. Much like the sack suit is a loose American style, There are three ways to make suits: ready-made and altered sizes, or pre-cut shapes, a convenience that often is expressed over time with wrinkles from poor shaping, leading to distortion. The made-to-measure suit that uses measurements, not shaping, to achieve things like style, lengths and horizontal measurements. The custom, bespoke tailoring design suit that has interim half-made fittings and is cut from an actual personal pattern. The acid test of authentic tailoring standards is the wrinkle that comes from poor tailoring. Rumples can be pressed out. For interim fittings, rock-avant, drawing and cutting inaccuracies are overcome by the fitting. Fabric suits are made in a variety of fabrics, but most commonly from wool. The two main yarns produce worsteds and woolens. These can be woven in a number of ways, producing flannel, tweed, gabardine, and fresco among others. These fabrics all have different weights and feel, and some fabrics have an S number describing the fineness of the fibers measured by average fiber diameter, e.g., Super 120. However, the finer the fabric, the more delicate and thus less likely to be long-wearing it will be. Although wool has traditionally been associated with warm, bulky clothing meant for warding off cold weather, advances in making finer and finer fiber have made wool suits acceptable for warmer weather, as fabrics have accordingly become lighter and more supple. Wool fabric is denominated by the weight of a 1 square yard piece. Thus, the heavier wools, suitable for winter only, are 12 to 14 ounces. The medium, 3-season, are 10 to 11 ounces. And summer wools are 7 to 8 ounces. Other materials are used, sometimes either alone or blended with wool, such as cashmere. Silk alone or blended with wool is sometimes used. Synthetic materials, while cheaper, e.g., polyester, are very rarely recommended by experts. At most, a blend of predominantly wool may be acceptable to obtain the main benefit of synthetics, namely resistance to wrinkling, particularly in garments used for travel. However, any synthetic, blended or otherwise, will always be warmer and clammier than wool alone. In hot weather, linen is also used, and in North America cotton seersucker is worn. The main four colors for suits worn in business are black, light gray, dark gray, and navy, either with or without patterns. In particular, gray flannel suiting has been worn very widely since the 1930s. In non-business settings or less formal business contexts, brown is another important color. Olive also occurs. In summer, lighter shades such as tan or cream are popular. For non-business use, tweed has been popular since Victorian times, and still is commonly worn. A wide range of color is available, including muted shades of green, brown, red, and gray. Tweeds are usually checked, or plain with a herringbone weave, and are most associated with the country. While full tweed suits are not worn by many now, the jackets are often worn as sports jackets with or trousers. The most conventional suit is a 2 or 3 button and either medium to dark gray or navy. Other conservative colors are grays, black, and olive. White and light blues are acceptable at some events, especially in the warm season. Red and the bright greens are usually considered unconventional and garish. Tradition calls for a gentleman's suit to be of decidedly plain color, with splashes of bright color reserved for shirts, neckties, or kerchiefs. In the United States and the United Kingdom, around the start of the 20th century, lounge suits were never traditionally worn in plain black, this color instead being reserved for formal wear and for undertakers. However, the decline of formal wear since the 1950s and the rise of casual wear in 1960s allowed the black suit to return to fashion. as many designers began wanting to move away from the business suit toward more fashion suits. Traditional business suits are generally in solid colors or with pinstripes. Window paint checks are also acceptable. Outside business, the range of acceptable patterns widens, with plaids such as the traditional Glen plaid and herringbone. Though apart from some very traditional environments such as London banking, these are worn for business now too. The color of the patterned element varies by gender and location. For example, bold checks, particularly with tweeds, have fallen out of use in the US, while they continue to be worn as traditionally in Britain. Some unusual old patterns such as diamonds are now rare everywhere. Inside the jacket of a suit, between the outer fabric and the inner lining, there is a layer of sturdy interfacing fabric to prevent the wool from stretching out of shape. This layer of cloth is called the canvas after the fabric from which it was traditionally made. Expensive jackets have a floating canvas, while cheaply manufactured models have a fused canvas. A fused canvas is less soft and, if poorly done, damages the suppleness and durability of the jacket. So many tailors are quick to deride fused canvas as being less durable, particularly since they may tend to permanently pucker along the jacket's edges after some use or a few dry cleanings. However, some selling this type of jacket claim that the difference in quality is very small. A few London tailors state that all bespoke suits should use a floating canvas jacket front buttons. Most single-breasted suits have 2 or 3 buttons, and 1 or 4 buttons are unusual, often have only 1 button. It is rare to find a suit with more than 4 buttons, although zoot suits can have as many as 6 or more due to the longer length. There is also variation in the placement and style of buttons, since the button placement is critical to the overall impression of height conveyed by the jacket. The center top button will typically line up quite closely with the natural waistline. There seems to be no clear rule as to which side the overlap should lie. It usually crosses naturally with the left side to the fore, but not invariably. Generally, a hidden button holds the underlap in place. Double-breasted jackets have only half their outer buttons functional, as the second row is for display only, forcing them to come in pairs. Some rare jackets can have as few as 2 buttons, and during various periods, for instance the 1960s and 70s, as many as 8 were seen. 6 buttons are typical, with 2 to button. The last pair floats above the overlap. The 3 buttons down each side may in this case be in a straight line, or more commonly, the top pair is half as far apart again as each pair in the bottom square. A 4-button double-breasted jacket usually buttons in a square. The layout of the buttons and the shape of the lapel are coordinated in order to direct the eyes of an observer. For example, if the buttons are too low, or the lapel roll too pronounced, the eyes are drawn down from the face, and the waist appears larger. Lapels. The jacket's lapels can be notched, peaked, shawl, or trick. Each lapel style carries different connotations and is worn with different cuts of suit. Notched lapels are only found on single-breasted jackets and are the most informal style. Double-breasted jackets usually have peaked lapels. Shawl lapels are a style derived from the Victorian informal evening wear, and as such are not normally seen on suit jackets except for dinner suits. For black tie events, only jackets with pointed and shawl lapels should be worn. In the 1980s, double-breasted suits with notched lapels were popular with power suits and the new wave style. In the late 1920s and 1930s, a design considered very stylish was the single-breasted peaked lapel jacket. This has gone in and out of vogue periodically, being popular once again during the 1970s, and is still a recognized alternative. The ability to properly cut peak lapels on a single-breasted suit is one of the most challenging tailoring tasks, even for very experienced tailors. The width of the lapel is a varying aspect of suits, and has changed over the years. The 1930s and 1970s featured exceptionally wide lapels, whereas during the late 1950s and most of the 1960s suits with very narrow lapels are often only about an inch wide were in fashion. The 1980s saw mid-size lapels with a low gorge. Current trends are towards a narrower lapel and higher gorge. Necktie width usually follows the width of the jacket lapel. Lapels also have a buttonhole intended to hold a boutonniere, a decorative flower. These are now only commonly seen at more formal events. Usually double-breasted suits have one hole on each lapel, while single-breasted suits have just one on the left. Pockets. Most jackets have a variety of inner pockets, and two main outer pockets, which are generally either patch pockets, flap pockets, or jetted pockets. The patch pocket is, with its single extra piece of cloth sewn directly onto the front of the jacket, a sporting option, sometimes seen on summer linen suits, or other informal styles. The flap pocket is standard for side pockets, and has an extra lined flap of matching fabric covering the top of the pocket. A jetted pocket is most formal, with a small strip of fabric taping the top and bottom of the slit for the pocket. This style is most often seen on formal wear, such as a dinner jacket. A breast pocket is usually found at the left side, where a pocket square or handkerchief can be displayed. In addition to the standard two outer pockets and breast pocket, some suits have a fourth, the ticket pocket, usually located just above the right pocket and roughly half as wide. While this was originally exclusively a feature of country suits, used for conveniently storing a train ticket, it is now seen on some town suits. Another country feature also worn sometimes in cities is a pair of hacking pockets, which are similar to normal ones, but slanted. This was originally designed to make the pockets easier to open on horseback while hacking. Sleeves. Suit jackets in all styles typically have 3 or 4 buttons on each cuff, which are often purely decorative. 5 buttons are unusual and are a modern fashion innovation. The number of buttons is primarily a function of the formality of the suit. A very casual summer sports jacket might traditionally have had only 1 button, while tweed suits typically have 3 and city suits 4. In the 1970s, 2 buttons were seen on some city suits. Today, 4 buttons are common on most business suits and even casual suits. Although the sleeve buttons usually cannot be undone, the stitching is such that it appears they could. Functional cuff buttons may be found on high-end or bespoke suits. This feature is called the surgeon's cuff and working buttonholes. Some wearers leave these buttons undone to reveal that they can afford a bespoke suit, although it is proper to leave these buttons done up. Modern bespoke styles and high-end off-the-rack suits equipped with surgeon's cuffs have the last 2 buttons stitched off-center, so that the sleeve hangs more cleanly should the buttons ever be undone. Certainty in fitting sleeve length must be achieved, as once working buttonholes are cut, the sleeve length essentially cannot be altered further. A cuffed sleeve has an extra length of fabric folded back over the arm, or just some piping or stitching above the buttons to allude to the edge of a cuff. This was popular in the Edwardian era as a feature of formal wear such as frock coats carried over to informal wear, but is now rare. Vent is a slit in the bottom rear of the jacket. Originally, vents were a sporting option, designed to make riding easier, so are traditional on hacking jackets, formal coats such as a morning coat, and, for practicality, overcoats. Today there are three styles of venting: the single-vented style, the ventless style, and the double-vented style. Vents are convenient, particularly when using a pocket or sitting down, to improve the hang of the jacket, so are now used on most jackets. Ventless jackets are associated with Italian tailoring, while the double-vented style is typically British. Waistcoats are originally designed to look agile under coat. Later it was obtained by the waiters of hotels to represent attention toward customers. Suit trousers are always made of the same material as the jacket, even from the 1910s to 1920s, before the invention of sports jackets specifically to be worn with odd trousers. Wearing a suit jacket with odd trousers was seen as an alternative to a full suit. However, with the modern advent of sports jackets, suit jackets are always worn with matching trousers, and the trousers have always been worn with the appropriate jacket. Trouser width has varied considerably throughout the decades. In the 1920s, trousers were straight-legged and wide-legged, with a standard width at the cuff of 23 inches. After 1935, trousers began to be tapered in at the bottom half of the leg. Trousers remained wide at the top of the leg throughout the 1940s. By the 1950s and 1960s, a more slim look had become popular. In the 1970s, suit makers offered a variety of styles of trousers, including flared, bell-bottomed, wide-leg, and more traditional tapered trousers. In the 1980s, these styles disappeared in favor of tapered, slim-legged trousers. One variation in the design of trousers is the use or not of pleats. The most classic style of trouser is to have two pleats, usually forward, since this gives more comfort sitting and better hang standing. This is still a common style, and for these reasons of utility has been worn throughout the 20th century. The style originally descended from the exaggeratedly widened Oxford bags worn in the 1930s in Oxford, which, though themselves short-lived, began a trend for fuller fronts. The style is still seen as the smartest, featuring on dress trousers with black and white tie. However, at various periods throughout the last century, flat-fronted trousers with no pleats have been worn, and the swing in fashions has been marked enough that the more fashion-oriented ready-to-wear brands have not produced both types continuously. Turn-ups on the bottom of trousers, or cuffs, were initially popularized in the 1890s by Edward VII, and were popular with suits throughout the 1920s and 1930s. After falling out of style in World War II, they were not generally popular again. Despite serving the useful purpose of adding weight to straighten the hang of the trousers, they have always been an informal option, being inappropriate on all formal wear. Other variations in trouser style include the rise of the trouser. This was very high in the early half of the 20th century, particularly with formal wear, with rises above the natural waist, to allow the waistcoat covering the waistband to come down just below the narrowest point of the chest. Though serving less purpose, this high height was duplicated in the day wear of the period. Since then, fashions have changed, and have rarely been that high again, with styles returning more to low-rise trousers, even dropping down to have waistbands resting on the hips. Other changing aspects of the cut include the length, which determines the break, the bunching of fabric just above the shoe when the front seam is marginally longer than height to the shoe's top. Some parts of the world, such as Europe, traditionally opt for shorter trousers with little or no break, while Americans often choose to wear a slight break. A final major distinction is made in whether the trousers take a belt or braces. While a belt was originally never worn with a suit, the forced wearing of belts during wartime years contributed to the rise in popularity, with braces now much less popular than belts. When braces were common, the buttons for attaching them were placed on the outside of the waistband, because they would be covered by a waistcoat or cardigan, but now Now it is more frequent to button on the inside of the trouser. Trousers taking braces are rather different in cut at the waist, employing inches of extra girth and also height at the back. The split in the waistband at the back is in the fishtail shape. Those who prefer braces assert that, because they hang from the shoulders, they always make the trousers fit and hang exactly as they should, while a belt may allow the trouser waist to slip down on the hips below a protruding midsection and requires constant repositioning. Also, they allow, indeed work best with a slightly looser waist which gives room for natural expansion when seated. Suit trousers, also known as dress pants in the US, are a style of trousers intended as formal or semi-formal wear. They are often made of either wool or polyester and may be designed to be worn with the matching suit jacket. Suit trousers have a crease on them because of the tight-fitting nature. Suit trousers can be worn at many formal and semi-formal occasions combined with a shirt that has no tie and a more relaxed fashion, which can be considered smart casual dress. Breeches as an alternative to trousers. Breeches may be worn with informal suits, such as tweed. These are shorter, descending to just below the knees, fastened closely at the top of the calf by a tab or button cuff. While once common, they are now typically only worn when engaged in traditional outdoor sports, such as shooting or golf. The length and design is closely related to the +4s worn for sport, but differ in having no bagginess. They are usually designed to be worn with long socks meeting just below the knee, but riding breeches worn with long boots such as top boots are long enough to meet the boot and display no sock. Accessories. Accessories for suits include neckties, shoes, wrist and pocket watches, pocket squares, cuff links, tie tacks, tie bars, bow ties and hats.